Hãy subscribe cho kênh Ghiền Mì Gõ để không bỏ lỡ ရှင်းထားတဲ့ပုံရိုက်နေတာ။အော်ဒီပုံရိုက်နေတာ။အော်အဲ့တော့သူကလိုက်ရှောင်။နောက်ဟာတခုရှိတယ်။
ခမည်းတော်ကရုပ်တက်တုံးလားခမည်းတော်ကရုပ်တက်တုံးလားခမည်းတော်ကရုပ်တက်တုံးလား
ရုံးထွက်ရုံးထွက်ရုံးထွက်ရုံးထွက်ရုံးထွက်ရုံးထွက်အာနာသိလုံးမအာနာသိလုံးမအာနာသိလုံးမအာနာသိလုံးမအာရမီအာရမီအာရမီညီရဲညီရဲညီရဲညီရဲညီရဲညီရဲ
ရာဇဝင်တွေလည်းရေးကြတော့မယ်အဖို့ရဲ့
အနေထားရတာနှိမ့်နိုင်နေတဲ့အနေထားရဖြစ်ပါနော်။ဒါဟိုဘက်ကနှစ်ဖက်လုံးပိတ်ကြတာဖြစ်ပါတယ်။ဒီဘက်ကိုဒီဘက်ကို
လည်းခေါ်လာတယ်ဟိုဘက်ကလည်းပြန်လာပို့ရမယ်အချိန်ရဒီချိန်ရတိုင်းသားကတက်လာယူလို့ပြန်ဟုတ်ကဲ့ဟုတ်တာပါဒီမှာပြောဒီကလာဒီဘက်ကလူတွေကားခွေးတာလက်ခံမလားမကောင်းဘူးဒီဒီမှာဘက်ကရတာပြောမီးတော့ဒီဘက်ကရတယ်ဒီဘက်ကတူးဖြစ်မှာဆိုတော့စားတယ်ကိုယ်လေးတော့အားလုံးတော့တောင်းနဲ့ဆရာကြီးနဲ့ဆရာကြီးနဲ့ဖြစ်ဟုတ်ပြီဒီမျိုးနဲ့အုပ်ချုပ်ရေးဟုတ်ပြီဒီကြီးရဲ့ဒီလူကြီးတွေပဲသွားကြဟုတ်ကဲ့ဟုတ်ဒါလည်းလူတွေချမ်းနေဒီကျန်တဲ့ကလေးတွေကဒီမှာစောင့်နေဟိုမှာကိစ္စပြီးသွားရဲ့ပြီးသွားတယ်ပြန်ရှုပ်ပေးတယ်ဟုတ်ပြီနော်လက်ပြုံးပေးမယ်လက်ဒီမှာကျွန်တော်ပဲကြံခဲ့မယ်တို့ဒီဘက်ကိုရအောင်တော့ကားလဲတဲ့အချိန်မှာရံမပြုတ်တယ်ဒါပဲအဲ့ဒါဟိုဒီဘက်ကိုထွက်ဖို့ကျွန်တော်တို့အကုန်လုံးသွားတယ်ဒီထဲမှာမရှိဟိုဘက်ပြောတော့ကားပဲရှိသွားမှာဆရာကားကိုငါပြောတော့ထုတ်ပါရဲ့ဒီဘက်ကိုပြောရမယ်နော်ဒီဘက်ကိုပြောရမယ်ကောင်းကြည့်မယ်ဒီမှာထိန်းနိုင်တဲ့လူတယောက်နေခဲ့တော့ကောင်းကြည့်တယ်ကောင်းပါမလဲပါကျွန်တော်ကတက်စီဒီမှာထိန်းနိုင်တဲ့လူတွေခဲ့သမီးနော်သမီးနေခဲ့နော်ဒီမှာကလေးကိုကျွန်တော်ထိန်းရတယ်ကလေးတွေကတော့သမီးစီကဥစ္စာအုပ်ချုပ်မှုပြောတော့အုပ်ချုပ်မှုလေနော်ဦးရေမှုပြောတော့ပဲတနာရီတွင်မရောက်တဲ့ပြန်လာပို့ပေးမယ်နော်ဒီမှာရှိတဲ့တော့ကိုခေါ်လိုက်မယ်ဒီမှာရှိတဲ့ဟိုတခုပဲရှိတယ်ကျွန်တော်တို့ကဟိုနေမောနော်အားလုံးဟုတ်လားဒီကလေးတွေပြင်ပြောင်းသွားပြီဆိုရင်ဒီຢာတွေတော့ဒီမှာရုပ်ပြမယ်ဒီမှာပြင်ရောက်လာပြီအဲ့ဒါမျိုးတောင်းစားနေတော့တားခွေပါအရင်မပြုတ်တယ်ဒါအတိပဲလားအတိပဲကျွန်တော်ရှိပါတယ်ကျွန်တော်အောင်ရကြစီတော့ဖတ်တော့ဘာကြောရောက်လာလဲအဲ့ဒါဘာကြောပဲဘာပြရနေကျွန်တော်ကားပြန်ခွင့်ပါလားအင်းရဖြစ်မှာပေါ့ဒီကပုံလာကျွန်တော်လည်းပြန်လာအားလဲတာကပြောပါဦးအားလဲဟုတ်ကဲ့တော်ပြီဟုတ်ပါโอเคပြောဒီမှာပဲဆက်ကျွန်တော်ဒီလိုပြန်ပါဟုတ်ကဲ့နေတာကကျွန်တော်တို့နော်ပါမောက္ခချုပ်မော်လမြိုင်တက္ကသိုလ်ပါမောက္ခချုပ်ကိုအာမခံတဲ့အတွက်ကြောင့်နော်ကလေးတွေတနိုင်တွင်းလွတ်ပေးမယ်ဒါဝယ်စခန်းဆိုဝေးရတဲ့အတွက်ကြောင့်နိုင်တာစခန်းမှာပဲအကုန်လုံးလွတ်ပေးမယ်လို့နော်ပါမောက္ခချုပ်ကိုအာမခံပါတယ်ပါမောက္ခချုပ်ကိုရောက်လာတာဖြစ်ပါတယ်နော်ဒီလိုပတ်ချာနေဖြစ်ပါနော်
တဲ့ထွက်လာတဲ့ထွက်လာ
ဒီဘက်ချမ်းပါနော်အခုကျွန်တော်ဟိုဘက်မှာဟိုဘက်ကိုသွားရောက်ရိုက်ပြအောင်ဖြစ်ပါတယ်ဒါကတော့နော်ကျွန်တော်တို့ဒီတက္ကသိုလ်ဘက်ချမ်းပါဟိုတက္ကသိုလ်ဘက်ချမ်းမှာအခုကားထွက်မဲ့လမ်းကြောင်းပြောင်းညှိနှိုင်းနေတာဖြစ်ပါတယ်နော်ပါမောက္ခချုပ်ကိုယ်တိုင်အာမခံပြီးတော့ညှိနှိုင်းပေးနေတာဖြစ်ပါတယ်လမ်းကြတယ်နော်ပါမောက္ခချုပ်ကိုယ်တိုင်အာမခံတာဖြစ်ပါတယ်နော်ပါမောက္ခချုပ်ကအာမခံပြီးတော့ပြန်ခေါ်လာပြီးမှဖြစ်ပါတယ်အခုညှိနှိုင်းမှုတစ်ခုနောက်မှဆိုလို့ရှိရင်တော့အခြေအနေတွေကတော့နော်ဆရာကြီးကလည်းပါတော့ဆရာကြီးကနော်ဆရာကြီးရောမယ်ဆရာကြီးရောမယ်ဘာမောက္ခချုပ်ကိုယ်တိုင်နော်ဘာမောက္ခချုပ်ရဲ့ညာရဲတဲ့ဘက်မူရဲ့နောက်ပြီးတော့ဒီကကျွန်တော်တာဝန်ရှိလူကြီးတွေရဲ့တော့အခုဒီကဖန်စီရတဲ့ကလေးတွေကိုနော်အာမခံပြီးတော့ခေါ်သွားပြီးမှဖြစ်ပါတယ်ခေါ်ပြီးတော့ချက်တနားရီတော့တွင်အဲ့ဒီ9ရောက်လုံးပေါင်းပြီးတော့ဒီကိုပြန်လာပြီးပြန်လွတ်ပြီးမှဖြစ်ပါတယ်ဘာမောက္ခချုပ်ကအာမခံတာပါနော်ဒါတွေဖြုတ်ပြလိုက်တော့သူတို့သွားလမ်းကြောင်းပွင့်လိုက်ပြောဒီမှာပြရဟိုကဖန်ထားတဲ့လေးယောက်ပေါင်းပြီးတော့ခေါ်ပြီးတော့ခဏအတွင်းတိလို့ပြန်လာအာမကကြောက်ကိုယ်တိုင်ကိုအာမခံဒီရောက်ပြီးတဲ့ခါကြောက်ရှင်တော့ပြန်လွတ်လာတော့ဖိတ်တာဟုတ်ကျန်တဲ့ပြည်မသွားကား3စီးလောက်မိတာပဲသွားမယ်ကျန်လူခါရ အခုအနေထားပါမောက္ခချုပ်ကိုယ်တိုင်ပါအောင်မှာဖြစ်ပါတယ်ပါမောက္ခချုပ်ကိုယ်တိုင်အာမခံတာပါနော်ကောင်းထွန်းတဲ့စိန်ပါမောက္ခချုပ်ကိုယ်တိုင်အာမခံပြီးတော့ကျွန်တော်တို့ဒီကတာဝန်ရှိတဲ့3-4ယောက်နဲ့ကား3-4စီးပဲသွားပါမယ်သွားပြီးတော့အနည်းဆုံးစကန်သွားပြီးတော့မနက်ကဖမ်းထားတဲ့4ယောက်ကိုပါခေါ်ပြီးတော့တနင်္လာနေ့အတွင်းဒီကိုပြန်လာမှာပဲပြန်လာပြီးတော့အဲ့ဒီကော်လုံး9ယောက်လုံးကိုလွတ်မယ်ဆိုပြီးတော့ဟိုဒေါ်သူညီချက်ရပါတယ်နော်ကျွန်တော်တို့ဒါပါမောက္ခချုပ်ကိုယ်တိုင်လိုက်ညှိပြီးတာဖြစ်ပါတယ်အချုပ်ကတော့မှဟို9ယောက်ခေါ်လို့ရမှာပေါ့အခုကတော့ကျွန်တော်မြင်တာတော့ပါမောက္ခချုပ်ကိုယ်တိုင်လာပါတယ်ပါမောက္ခချုပ်ကိုယ်တိုင်အာမခံပြီးတော့ပါမောက္ခချုပ်ကိုယ်တိုင်ညှိနှိုင်းပြီးတော့ခေါ်တာဖြစ်တဲ့အတွက်ကြောင့်ဒါပေမဲ့ဒီဘက်ကလည်းမပြီးသွားတဲ့လူတွေကလည်းရှိနေသေးပါတယ်နော်အဲ့လိုဖြစ်နေတာနော်အဲ့လူတွေမနက်ကဖမ်းထားတဲ့လူတွေပေါင်းပြီးတော့ဒီကိုပြန်ခေါ်လာပါမယ်ပါမောက္ခချုပ်ကအာမခံပြီးပြန်ခေါ်လာမယ်တနင်္လာနေ့အတွင်းပေါ့နော်တနင်္လာနေ့အတွင်းခေါ်လာပြီးဒီမှာပြန်လွတ်ပေးမယ်လို့ပြောပါတယ်နော်အဲ့တော့ဒီကအခုလက်ရှိအနေထားကတော့မပြီးသွားတော့ဘူးဆိုတဲ့အနေထားတွေဖြစ်လာနေပြန်ပြီနော်
ထုတ်ပါပြီးသွားတယ်ဝိုင်းပြောလုံးဝသိကြလားကလေးလုံးဝသိကြလားဆော်ပေးမယ်လုံးပေးမယ်အေးလုံးပေးမယ်အမတိုင်းလုံးပေးမယ်ဟိုဘက်ချမ်းကတော့ညှိရောရပါမယ်ဒီဘက်ချမ်းတော့ညှိလို့မရသေးပါဘူးခင်ဗျာ
အကလုံးကပြီးပါပြီသူတို့ဘယ်လိုလုပ်လဲရေးသူတို့ရေးမလို့ရအောင်
ဒါတော့ခုလည်းမှာနော်ဖန်စီအောင်းလာနေကြည့်လို့ရှိပါရဲ့အထက်မှာနော်ထုတ်ကားနဲ့ပါမောက္ခချုပ်ကိုယ်တိုင်လိုက်မှာဖြစ်ပါတယ်နော်အခုကျောင်းသားတွေခေါ်သွားတဲ့အချုပ်ကားနဲ့ပါမောက္ခချုပ်ကိုယ်တိုင်ဒီမှာဟောမြတ်တုပ်ဆိုပါမောက္ခချုပ်ကိုယ်တိုင်လိုက်သွားမှာဖြစ်ပါတယ်နော်
ဘယ်တော့နေတာခဲပါတော့
Hãy subscribe cho kênh Ghiền Mì Gõ để không bỏ lỡ
တာစကားမှာဟိုမနေ့ကဖမ်းထားတဲ့
4 ယောက်အဲ့မှာပဲလားနေတာမှာပဲ
အဲ့4ယောက်ကခေါ်ပြီးဒီကောင်နဲ့ပေါင်းပြီးကတော့ပြန်ခေါ်ပြီးဒီကောင်ပြန်လုပ်တယ်အဲ့လိုမျိုးဟုတ်တယ်အားလုံးကတော့အချုပ်ကားနဲ့သူပါမောက္ခချုပ်ကိုယ်တိုင်လိုက်မှာဖြစ်ပါတယ်နော်အများကြီးသားရဲစခန်းသွားမှာဖြစ်ပါတယ်အခုနောက်ဆုံးအနေနဲ့အခုသွားတော့မှဖြစ်ပါတယ်နော်သွားပြီးတော့တနင်္လာနေ့မှာပြန်ပြီးတော့မနေ့ကဖမ်းထားတဲ့လူရောအခုလက်ရှိဖမ်းထားတဲ့လူရောအကုန်လုံးခေါ်ပြီးတော့ပြန်လာမယ်လို့ဆိုပါတယ်နော်အဲ့ဒီမှာကျွန်တော်တို့ဒါပါမောက္ခချုပ်ကိုယ်တိုင်ပါပါတယ်ပါမောက္ခချုပ်ကိုယ်တိုင်ချုပ်ကားနဲ့နော်ចောင်းသားတွေနဲ့ဒီသူတွေဖမ်းထားတဲ့အချုပ်ကားနဲ့ပါမောက္ခချုပ်ကိုယ်တိုင်ခေါင်းကမ်းမှာလိုက်ပြီးတော့ပါသွားမှာဖြစ်ပါတယ်နော်ပါမောက္ခချုပ်ကအာမခံပေမဲ့လည်းတချို့မှာနော်မယုံကြည်တဲ့လူတွေလည်းရှိပါသေးတယ်နော်အနေထားတော့အခုလက်ရှိတောင်းတာပြည်သူရောရောနေတဲ့ခါကျတော့နော်ဘယ်သူတွေမှတော့မသိပါဘူးနော်အကုန်လုံးနော်အနေထားလေးကညှိနေတော့မှာပါမောက္ခချုပ်ကအာမခံပေမဲ့လည်းညှိနှိုင်းလို့မရသေးပါဘူးเนาะပြောပါဘူးပြောတယ်ပါမောက္ခချုပ်ကလာပါနော်笑不笑？ချိန်နေနေကုန်မှာခင်ဗျာကျွန်တော်အမခမှာနော်ဒီမှာဘောလနိုင်ဒီနာလူတွေပဲဖြစ်မှာပါဟောဘောလနိုင်တက်ကတော့မိတ်ဆွေတွေရောမျိုးတွေရောအကုန်ပတ်သက်တဲ့လူတွေပဲပါကျွန်တော်တို့နော်ဖန်ကနေကျွန်တော်ကလေးတွေပါအကုန်ပြန်ပါလာအောင်ကျွန်တော်လုပ်ပေးဟုတ်ကဲ့ဆိုရင်ကကြားလေးပုံဆိုးသွားမယ်နော်ကြားရင်ပုံဆိုးသွားမယ်ဆရာကြီးပြောရမှန်းနဲ့အမခတယ်ဆိုအသက်အမခခိုင်းတာဘယ်သူအမခခိုင်းတာလဲကျွန်တော်ဆရာကြီးကျွန်တော်ဘာလို့ချင်လို့လဲရှင်းပေးလိုက်လက်တားလိုက်ပါလက်တော်လိုက်ပါရှင်းပေးလိုက်ပါဘာဘောကကြောက်ကိုယ်ဘာဘောစားမလို့ရတယ်အားတော့ပါအားတာပါဘာကလည်းမတော်တော်ကြီးကြတာနားလည်းပါတော့တောင်းတယ်ချိန်နေလေးကပဲဘာဘောကကြောက်ကိုယ်ပြောနေတာပါနားလည်းရရလက်ဆွဲစားဖို့ ကိုယ်တိုင်လမ်းရှင်းပြီးသွားတော့မှဖြစ်ပါတယ်နော်ဒါလည်း
ရောက်ကားလိုက်တာပြီးကျော်ပါလို့တော့လိုက်ခဲ့တယ်
ချိန်နေကြကုန်မယ်
ဟုတ်ပါတို့တွေခက်ကြတော့ပြီးတော့ဒီလိုဒီအကောင်လုံး9ရောက်လုံးဒီရှေ့ကိုကျွန်တော်တို့ပြန်ဖို့ပဲခါကြမှာဒီတော့ဆိုင်ဆက်ပါဆိုင်ဆက်လာထုတ်ပြပါမယ်
ချိန်ကြကုန်မယ်နောက်ပါ
ပြေးလဲနေတာဟိုအဲ့လိုပဲဒီကအထဲမှာအဲ့လိုမျိုးတွေပါတော်လေးတင်းမာနေပါပြီဒီကုန်းဖြစ်နေပါပြီဗျာဒီဘက်ကလည်းကျန်တော့ 有个电脑里面。今天都到对马里，后边的别人那别的家。冇知道多哪里办的你？哎，让我知道过来，新的来做呢。sana piatu de baka gere na di tana di Lusura hey我哋八號你咧掛你呢嚟。လက်ရှိချင်းရတော့ဒီဟိုအထီးကုန်ပြပြီးတော့ဒီမှာဒါဒီစေချနာပြပြီးတော့ဂဲရီနဲ့ထူဖတ်ဒါချင်းနေပါလေအခုတော့ 这不要了。这不要来不了。这是你他哦，这都多的哪里了？那现在我那边前面把那地下车啊热住完，后面热住完。给那边，给那边。前面的要对嘛，是把的。
接上，接上，真要接上，哟！这个接上，接上，要往回拿的，接上，不嘛？我那边，我那边，我那边，我那边，我那边给你那边，给你那边。哪就别。哪里去？
လက်ရှိအခြေအနေရတော့ဗောလေဒီနှစ်ဖက်ဗောလေဒီចောင်းသားဖန်စီခဏရဲ့ចောင်းသားတွေကိုပြန်လှုပ်ပေးဖို့ဆိုပြီးတော့ဒီမော်မယ်တက္ကသိုလ်ပေါမောကကျုပ်တို့အပါဝင်ဗောလေညှိနှိုင်းခဲ့ပြီးညှိနှိုင်းပြီးတနိုင်အတွက်ចောင်းသားတွေကိုပြန်လှုပ်ပေးဖို့ဒီတနိုင်အတွက်ပြန်လှုပ်ပေးဖို့ဗောလေသူတို့တွေအချင်းချင်းညှိနှိုင်းထားကြတယ်ဒါပေမဲ့လက်ရှိအခြေအနေမှာဒီဖန်စီခဏចောင်းသားတွေပါတဲ့ကားကိုဒီ yes ကန်ခေါ်ရမယ့်အချိန်မှာစပြီးတော့ပြိပခါစဖြစ်တာဗောလေDạ, nghe là. Sau cả chỉ bảo đấy, thì này này bé mà to vào nó, là cá thưa vô lông này chơi mà bé mà biết khai là chơi bảo nó, cá thưa vô lông này chơi mà, giờ ta ra lục địa bao nhiêu chơi chơi mà thay vì chơi bảo đó mà bao bao cái chỗ đó. Sau cả chỉ đi bảo đấy, thì mà bé mà to thoát ra mà thoát đi thoát khăn đi đấy chơi mà biết đâu à?
Anh ủa cũng tiếp nhà sao nhỉ? Ủa tụi mình tiếp nhà sao mà đi mà trăm bộ cha cho nó lên lên cái béo à? Cái này tụi mình thích làm cái gì không? Tụi mình ta cái đó có thích cái gì? Đúng rồi. Tụi mình béo gì à? Nhiều chỗ là béo gì? 红脚上，红脚上。
ပြန်သွားရောအေးအဲ့ဒါပဲ
ဒီနားလေးကိုကျွန်တော်ကားနဲ့တင်ပြီးတော့ဆေးရုံပို့တာအေးမနဲ့ပို့တာ
အေးမပြောတယ်သေချာညှိထားပြီပြန်ပို့လာပေးမယ်
အေးဒီကသူတို့ကဟိုဖြစ်တာဟုတ်ဘယ်လိုလဲ
မယုံဆိုတော့မယုံလို့လည်းမရဘူးလေ
အနာရနောက်တော့ဒီနီးပဲရှိတာဘယ်လို
ဟိုကနေထုတ်လိုက်တာဟိုကခဲနဲ့အရင်ထုတ်တော့အမှကြောက်ပေါ့
ဟိုဘက်ချမ်းရတယ်ဒီဘက်ချမ်းရနေပြီဆို
ထိန်းလို့ရတယ်အခုဆရာပြန်သွားပြီဆိုတော့ဘယ်လိုလုပ်
အေး
ဆရာလည်းပြန်
ကျွန်တော်ကကားပေါ်ဆွဲကြတယ်မိဂတိတီတာတွေပါလုံးနှောက်ပါပါနှောက်ကြည့်တယ်
ဒီဘက်ချမ်းကတော့မဖြစ်ဘူးလို့ပြောတယ်ဟိုဘက်ချမ်းမှာခဏဈေးကျိုးဝိုင်းဘက်ကထွက်တာဒီဘက်ကားထွက်ကန်နေချိန်မှာဂဲနဲ့စထုတယ်လို့ပြောပါတယ်ဂဲနဲ့စထုပြီးတော့အဲ့ကနေပြီးတော့စပြီးတော့ဖြိုခွင်းနဲ့တိကေုံပုံစံဖြစ်သွားတာဖြစ်ပါတယ်နော်ဒီဘက်ချမ်းကတော့ထွက်နေပါတယ်ဒီဆိုရောက်တာဖြစ်နေပြီးတော့
ကျွန်တော်တယ်ပါဟိုကနေပြီးအဲ့ဆင်းတော့ပေါ်ပါတယ်
ဒီကတော့ဆေးရုံပို့လာ
ဘယ်နေရောက်ထူတာလဲ
ဘာမှလေးတယောက်ပို့လာတယ်ကျွန်တော်တို့ကဆေးထွက်တယ်ဆေး
တော့ပါကြည့်ပဲလား ကဘာရှိရလဲ
ဟုတ်လားပြင်ကျွန်တော်တောင်းတယ်
အခုဘယ်လိုလောက်အောင်လဲကျွန်တော်တို့
တော့မသိတော့လေတို့ဥစားတော့လို့ပေါ့ဘာမှတော့ဒီဘက်ကထွက်နေပြီဒီဘက်ကထွက်နေပြီတော့ဟိုဘက်ကနေဟိုဘက်သေးချိုဘက်က
ဟုတ်နောက်မောက်အဲ့ဒါနောက်ဟိုတာတပုတ်နောက်တပုတ်တော့ပုတ်ဒီကနေစား
ဒီကားစီးတော့ပြထားမှာကျွန်တော်လူကျွန်တော်ကောင်းနေတော့ဆိုတော့အဲဒီကားကိုပြန်ရက်ခိုင်းရကားအလင်အောင်ရောက်နေတယ်ဟုတ်တယ်ဟုတ်အဲ့ဒါနဲ့ခဏနေဆိုရောတော့ခဏနေဆိုအနောက်ကလာအဲ့ဒီကတည်းကဖြစ်တယ်ကျွန်တော်လို့ဆိုတာဖြစ်
တယ်ကျန်ရလူတွေအများကြီးပါတယ်နည်းပြီးဆိုတော့မထိုင်နိုင်တော့ဘူးမထိုင်နိုင်လူစုံပြတ်သွားတော့လူစုံပြတ်တော့ဟိုညှိလို့မရထိုင်ညှိလို့မရဘူး
ကျောင်းသားချင်းကိုကျောင်းသားကိုဖွဲ့ရ
ကျောင်းသားတွေကပထမလက်ခံတယ်လက်ခံတော့အဆင်ပြေပါ
ကျောင်းသားကြီးတို့ကကားပေါ်တော့တက်ထိုက်ပါဘူးထောက်ပြီးတော့ဒီပြင်လူကြတော့ဘောင်းတော့မရှိဘူး
ဘုံတော်ဝါချင်းကိုရလာမရှိအခုလည်းကြည့်ရတော့ဒါခဏအချုပ်ကားထွက်တဲ့အနေထားပါနော်ချုပ်ကားဒီမှာပဲရှိပါတယ်ချုပ်ကားတော့တို့ကဘယ်နဲ့အဆင်ပြေပြီးမဲ့နေရမှာအဆင်ပြေပြီးရဲ့နေရမှာဒါတော့အထီးကြီးုံနေဖြစ်သွားတယ်လူတွေကများတဲ့ခါကျတော့ဘလုံးမညှိလို့မရဘူးလေညှိလို့မရတဲ့နေပြီးဖြစ်သွားတာပေါ့ရဲကားတွေအကုန်လုံးလည်းဟိုထုချိကန်ထိတာတဲ့အနေထားတွေပေါ့နော်
ထုတ်လို့ရမှာဒီစားလာလေထုတ်မရဘူးသူတို့မျိုးပဲပိုက်တယ်
အခုလည်းရှိအထီးကြီးုံဖြစ်ပြီးနောက်အခြေအနေတွေပါကျွန်တော်တို့ရဲကားတွေအကုန်လုံးကြည်မွားပါလေဟာငါ့ကိုဒီချင်းဟယ်လိုဟုတ်ကဲ့ဟုတ်ကဲ့ပြောပါပထမတော့ညှိနှိုင်းမှုအဆင်ပြေတော့ဒီចောင်းသားတွေပြန်ခေါ်ထုတ်ပြီးတော့ဗောနော်ဘာမောက်ကကြီးကအာမခံပြန်ခေါ်လာဖို့ညှိနှိုင်းလို့အဆင်ပြေတဲ့ခါကျတော့ဒီကထွက်နေပြီးမှအပြင်လဲရောက်ကန်ဒီမှအမှားကဒီလူအုပ်ထဲကကျတော့လူစုံဖြစ်သွားတယ်ចောင်းသားတွေတက်တယ်မဟုတ်လေចောင်းသားတွေတက်မဟုတ်ဘူးလေလူစုံဖြစ်သွားတယ်လူစုံဖြစ်တဲ့ခါကျတော့ဟိုမပေးထွက်ဘူးဘုန်းကလည်းလူကညှိလို့မရတဲ့အနေအထားတစ်ခုမှာအမှားဟိုချုပ်ကားမပေးထွက်တော့ဘာညာနဲ့လူရောက်ဝိုင်းအောင်တဲ့အနေအထားတစ်ခုတွေဖြစ်သွားတယ်နောက်ဒီဘက်ချမ်းလည်းဟိုခဲနဲ့ပြစ်တာတွေစပြီးတော့ပြက်ခတ်တဲ့အနေအထားတွေလည်းဖြစ်သွားတာတော့မြင်တာပေါ့နော်ကျွန်တော်ကကြတော့ဒီဘက်အခြေရောက်နေတော့နောက်ဘက်ချမ်းဖြစ်တာတော့မသိအဲ့နောက်ဘက်ချမ်းတွေစပြီးတော့အမှဟိုတနက်ဖောက်တံတွေစပြီးကြားရတာပဲကြားပြီးတော့အချိန်တွေကအဲ့အနေဖြစ်သွားတယ်ဟိုတိကယုံဖြစ်ပြီးတဲ့နောက်ဒီမှာအကုန်လုံးတော့ကျွန်တော်တော့ဒီရဲကားတွေအကုန်လုံးနဲ့ဒါဟိုကအောက်ခဲနေထုတ်ပြီးတော့အကုန်လုံးဖြက်စီးခံလိုက်ရပြီနော်ဟိုဒီဘက်ချမ်းလူတွေလည်းတိကက်တန်ရလို့ရှိပါတယ်တိကက်တန်ရလို့ရှိတဲ့လူတွေကျတော့ကျွန်တော်တို့ဟိုနော်ကျွန်တော်ကိုရကယ်သေးဖို့ဆိုတော့ရေးပေါ်ကယ်ပြီးတော့ကျွန်တော်အခုပို့သားမဲ့နေရာပို့ထားပြီးပါပြီနော်ဘာဘာကြီးလို့ပဲထင်ပါတယ်เนาะကျွန်တော်တို့ပြစ်တဲ့အချိန်မှာမြင်ရအောင်ကျွန်တော်ဒီကားထွက်တဲ့ဘက်ချောင်းသွားနေတော့လေဒီအနောက်မှာဖြစ်တဲ့ဟာတွေမမြင်လိုက်ရအောင်ပေါ့เนาะဒီဘောလည်းအများများတာပေါ့
လိုက်
也不用，因为
ဘာသာတယ်အဲ့မှာအဲ့ဒီစကားလေးပဲပြည်သူတွေပဲပြောရတော့ပဲဆိုင်ပဲအဲ့လိုပြည်လုံးပြောပြည်သူတွေ
ကျေးဇူး
နေသားမဒီမှာနဲ့ကွာတော့ကနီးတော့ဗောနော်ဘက်ကလည်းရေဘူးကြကျွန်တော်အချိန်ကအချိန်ကဟိုသားရပြီဟိုသားရပြီသားဟိုကော့ယူလိုက်
ဒီမှာရောကတ်ကြီး
အေးဟုတ်ပြီရပို့မယ်သားပို့မယ်ဘာထိတာပို့ရပြီဟုတ်ပြီအဲ့လိုပဲတက်ကတော့ဟိုဖြစ်မှာဆိုလို့
လေးနည်းနည်းတလားနော်ဟောရပါတယ်
ဟုတ်ပြီရတယ်ဒီမှာပုတ်ပြီးတော့ဒီမှာထိုင်နေတယ်ပြောင်းနေခဲ့တော့ဒီမှာထိုင်နေလို့နေခဲ့သမီးနော်သမီးနေခဲ့ဒီမှာ
你这样。
ကားထောက်သွားပြီကားထောက်သွားပြီကောင်းသားလေးပါတဲ့ကားထောက်သွားပြီကားထောက်လို့မရဘူးလေ
ဟေးကားဘာလို့ထွက်တာကားဘာလို့ထွက်တာ
တန်ကြတယ်ကွာ
ဟေး
အစီအရုံးတန်ကြတယ်ကွာဘာလို့ထွက်တာဘာဘာဖြစ်တော့လဲ
ကျောင်းသားတွေကိုဒီမှာပြမယ်ကျောင်းသားတွေတွေ့ပြီးမှကျောင်းသားတွေကိုဒီမှာလွတ်ပြီးမှကျွန်တော်ပြန်မယ်မလွတ်ချင်ကျွန်တော်မပြန်ဘူးဒီမှာကျွန်တော်ကျောင်းသားတွေ
တော့ဒီဖန်စီကန်ဒီចောင်းသားတွေရှိတဲ့ကားပေါ့လေဘာပြောချင်လဲဒီလိုဘာပြောချင်လဲဘာပြောချင်လဲဝင်ရပြကြပြီအားလုံးဒီလိုပါလေပါနေတော့တော့ဘယ်နဲ့မှရောက်နေတယ်တိုင်းမှာမရောဘူးတော့ဘာလို့ပြောပါလက်ရှိအခြေအနေမှာတော့ဒီမော်လမြိုင်တက္ကသိုလ်ပါမောက္ခချုပ်ကိုယ်တိုင်လာပြီးတော့ဒါညှိနှိုင်းနေတဲ့အခြေအနေပေါ့လေတော့ဒါမော်လမြိုင်တက္ကသိုလ်ပါမောက္ခချုပ်ဒါဒီတောင်းသားတွေကိုဖန်ဆီးခေါ်ဆောင်သွားတဲ့ကားနဲ့အတူဒါလိုက်သွားမယ်သဘောမျိုးရှိနေတာအခုလက်ရှိအခြေအနေကတော့လေဒီမော်ဒန်ကျောင်းသားတွေဖန်ဆီးခံရတဲ့ကိစ္စကိုလက်ရှိဒီမှာတော့ညှိနှိုင်းမှုတချို့အဆင်ပြေထားပြီးတော့လေညှိနှိုင်းမှုအများဆိုရင်တော့ဒီကျောင်းသားတွေကိုဒီလက်စကန်ကနေပြီးတော့တနိုင်အတွင်းဆောင်းပြန်လှုပ်ပေးတဲ့ပုံစံမျိုးကိုဒီမှာညှိနှိုင်းသွားသိရပါတယ်လက်ရှိဒီကားပေါ်မှာဆိုလဲဒါမော်ဒန်တက္ကသိုလ်ဘာမှကောက်ဒေါက်တာအမေတိုစိန်ကိုယ်တိုင်ဒါပါသွားပါတယ်ဒါတော့ဒါဒီရတဲ့ဘက်ကတော့တက်နိုင်အတွက်ပြန်လို့ပေးမယ်လို့ဒါပြောထားပါတယ်လောလောဆယ်တော့ကျွန်တော်တို့မြင်အတွေ့အကြုံအတိုင်းနဲ့ဒါအမေတက်ကူရဲ့တာမောချုပ်ကိုတိုင်ဒါဒီမှာစပြီးတော့ကြာပွဲမှုလမ်းဖြည့်ရှင်းသွားမယ့်ပုံမျိုးပဲရှိနေပါတယ်ဆရာမသမဒီရဝိုင်းလာပြောပြီးပြီဘယ်လဲပြောပြီးပြီပြောပြီးပါပေးပါပါတယ်တန်းစီတော့ပါလားဖူးပြလိုက်ပါဆရာကြီးပါတယ်ဖူးပြလိုက်ပါဆရာကြီးပါတယ်ဆရာကြီးပါတယ်ဒုံကြီးရတော့ဒါနေလိုက်စီပါဆရာကြီးပါပြောချင်တယ်ဆရာကြီးပါပြောချင်တယ်လက်ရှိမှာတော့ဒါလူထုကဒီကိစ္စကိုဒီလက်ခံမခံပေါ့လေဒီမှာသဘောထားတွေမေးနေကြတာပေါ့လေဒီဆန္ဒပြတောင်းဆိုသူတွေကတော့ဒါတောင်းသားတွေကိုဒီနေရာမှာပဲလှုပ်ပေးဖို့ပေါ့လေဒါတို့ဘက်ကလိုလားနေတဲ့အခြေအနေပေါ့လေ
မော်လမြိုင်ဒီနာလူတွေပဲဖြစ်မှာပါငါမော်လမြိုင်တက္ကသိုလ်မိတ်ဆွေတွေရောအမျိုးတွေရော
còn bắt tết được đi mà cho nó được hai cái này là cho nó thế đi mà con cái ba lao cho nó được số gì luôn xia gì ok số gì là cha đi bố số đó mày hả
không phải là xia gì mà xia gì
là xem là ta ama khang cái nào ama khang cái nào cho nó
không xia gì
cho nó bảo nó xin rồi
xia gì dùng đấy xia gì dùng à
nó mấy bà xin mấy bà
xia gì mà nó xia gì mà xia này mà nó
làm nhà bí à nó nhớ đi sao rồi nó
sao sao này mà
nó nhớ đi sao rồi mà nó nhớ đi sao rồi mà sao mà
xia nó cho mà đấy nó đi bây giờ trong này giải chắc gì là đuôi à ta mà
အားလုံးပဲနဲ့နားထောင်ပေးပါနည်းနည်းလေးနားထောင်ပေးပါကျွန်တော်တို့ရဲ့အရှိကားလေးတွေကပါတယ်ဗါလေတခြားလူတွေနဲ့အတော့ကအချုပ်ကားတော့သွားမယ်ဒါပေမဲ့ဒီနေ့လူ
ဝါရမေ
တော့ခဲမှာထည့်ထားမယ်တို့ပဲထဲမှာပေးထားမယ်တို့လူထဲမှာထည့်ထားမယ်တို့မပါတို့တွေခါကြတော့ပြီးတော့ခလေးတွေကိုဒီအကောင်လုံး900လုံးဒီအရှိကိုကျွန်တော်လက်ပြန်ပို့ပေးတဲ့ခါကြမှာဒီ300ကျွန်တော်ပြန်ပေးမယ်လက်ခံလားလက်ခံပါအဲ့တော့ကျွန်တော်တို့လည်းလမ်းဖယ်ပါ
9000နဲ့သတိထားပေးပါ
ခြေလဲနေဟိုအဲ့လိုပဲ ဒီကားကိုဝိုင်းပြီးတော့ဟိုလိုက်ကြတယ်နော်လက်ရှိအခြေအနေကတော်တော်လေးတင်းမာနေပါပြီဒီကိန်းဖြစ်နေပါပြီခင်ဒီဘက်ကတက်လာလိမ့်မယ်ဘုဘအချိန်ကတော်တော်တင်းမနေဟိုဘက်ဒီခဲတွေနဲ့ပြစ်နေကြတယ်ဘုံကျွန်တော်ကအနောက်တွေပါနေပြီအဲ့ကြောင့်ကျွန်တော်ကိုယ်လိုက်ကြည့်လို့လိုက်ပြောနေဆန္ဒပြသူတွေဘက်ကခဲတွေနဲ့တော့ဒီတနက်ဒီလူစုလားဟေးဘာဖြစ်လဲအများထိုင်းတော့ပါလေထိုင်းတော့ဒီကောတွေဘာကောင်းနေလဲကွာဒီနေလိုက်
叫那个别别别别别别
ရဲတွေရောက်လာတယ် လက်ရှိအချိန်တွေကတော့ဒီဟိုအထီးကလုံးဖြစ်ပြီးတော့ဒီမှာဒါဒီစေချနာပြပြီးတော့ဂဲရီနဲ့ထူဖောက်ဒါအချိန်တွေပေါ့လေအခုကတော့တပွဲကတော့
Swana for a video message.
Madam President, today marks the third history of this council that a special session has been convened specifically to address the human rights situation in Myanmar. The violations still relate to the rights of citizens to freely choose their elected representatives, their right to freedom of opinion and expression, peaceful assembly and association. Botswana notes with great concern this deteriorating human rights situation and urges Myanmar to fully cooperate with relevant agencies to ensure unhindered humanitarian access to all people who may need it, including in the Rakhine state. We strongly urge security forces to refrain from perpetrating any form of acts of systematic, targeted and deliberate human rights violations and abuses. We hold the view that democratic values, including the right to vote, the rule of law and good governance are sacrosanct, and we will speak against their violation, as happened in Myanmar on the 1st of February 2021, when the military seized power despite a democratically chosen government being in place. We note with concern reports of arbitrary arrest of high-level politicians and protesters, enforced disappearances, restrictions on the work of civil society and journalists, media platforms including internet and social media. As the global body mandated with the responsibility for the protection of human rights, we must act with the agency that this crisis deserves through the outcome resolution that we will adopt later today. The international community must ensure that when the situation normalizes, we strengthen efforts toward rebuilding democratic institutions and values in Myanmar to avoid the recurrence of such unacceptable events. I thank you.
Thank you, and I now give the floor to Malaysia for a video message.
Madam President, Malaysia continues to follow closely the developments in Myanmar. Malaysia calls on all parties to give utmost priority to the maintenance of peace and security. We reaffirm our strong support for Myanmar's democratic transition, peace process, and inclusive economic development. We call on all parties to uphold and respect democratic institutions and processes, the rule of law, human rights, and fundamental freedoms, including the right to peaceful assembly and freedom of expression. We urge all parties in Myanmar to exercise self-restraint and resolve their disagreement in a peaceful manner through dialogue and established legal mechanisms. Malaysia supports efforts to reconcile the differences among Myanmar's leaders to avoid adverse consequences to the people and the state of Myanmar. Malaysia sincerely hopes that an amicable solution that upholds the will and aspiration of the people will be pursued promptly. Malaysia will continue to play a constructive role to ensure peace, stability, and prosperity of ASEAN, which are essential for the region's progress. Thus, Malaysia and Indonesia have agreed to pursue an ASEAN meeting to engage constructively with Myanmar. Malaysia calls on Myanmar to remain resolute in delivering its commitment to begin and ensure effective repatriation of the displaced Rohingyas and protect their human rights. The international community must continue to support all efforts towards their safe, voluntary, dignified, and sustainable repatriation. The full version of this statement is on Astronet. Thank you.
Thank you, and I now give the floor to Lithuania for a video message.
Thank you, Madam President. Lithuania aligns itself with the EU statement. We strongly condemn the recent military coup in Myanmar and the arbitrary detention of the Myanmar State Councillor Aung San Suu Kyi, President Win Myint, elected lawmakers, officials, and activists. Lithuania calls upon the Myanmar military leadership to end the state of emergency, to restore power to the legitimate civilian government, to release all those arbitrarily detained, to stop violence against demonstrators, and fully respect and protect human rights, fundamental freedoms, and the rule of law. People of Myanmar must not be subject to repressions. Lithuania is particularly concerned about the restrictions on information flows, including internet shutdown, targeting of the media, and journalist harassment. We urge Myanmar to fully cooperate with the UN human rights mechanisms, including Special Rapporteur on Human Rights in Myanmar and IIMM. Lithuania welcomes the timely convocation of this special session and supports the draft Council resolution on human rights implications of the crisis in Myanmar. Thank you.
Thank you, and I now give the floor to Ecuador by Zoom.
Thank you, President. My delegation would like to thank the Deputy High Commissioner and the Special Rapporteur for their reports on the crisis in Myanmar. Ecuador, consistent with its permanent stance defending democracy and human rights, condemns the coup d'etat in Myanmar and deplores the arbitrary detention of political leaders, activists, human rights defenders, journalists inter alia, as well as the violent acts which are an assault against the rights of freedom of expression, freedom of opinion, freedom of association and peaceful assembly, religion or belief. In addition, we express our deep concern at the declaration of a state of emergency imposed by the Myanmar army, as well as the excessive use of force against demonstrators and restrictions when it comes to access to humanitarian assistance. Ecuador would also join the appeal that security forces of Myanmar fully respect human rights and fundamental freedoms. Finally, we really hope that there will be a peaceful settlement to this crisis through dialogue, which will mean there will be return to the rule of law and reconciliation between the various actors in a framework characterized by unrestricted respect for human rights as well as democratic norms and standards. Thank you.
Thank you, and I now give the floor to Estonia by video message.
Madam President, Estonia strongly condemns the coup in Myanmar and the unlawful detention of State Councillor Aung San Suu Kyi, President U Win Myint and other political leaders. All those detained should be released immediately and unconditionally. The Myanmar people have chosen democracy and their strong belief in democratic processes was reconfirmed at the recent elections. The sudden turn of developments is very regrettable. We urge the military, Tatmadaw, to respect the 2008 constitution and the people's choice and to allow the National Assembly to reconvene peacefully with all its elected members. We urge all armed forces in Myanmar to cease fighting and recommit to the peace process. Any differences must be resolved through peaceful dialogue. The international community must use its leverage to avoid violence and crushing of peaceful protests. We are deeply troubled by and condemn the restrictions on use of internet and social media as these undermine human rights and fundamental freedoms, including the rights of peaceful assembly and freedom of association and expression that form the basis of a democratic society. It is also important to ensure that the basic needs of the most vulnerable groups, including ethnic minorities, will not be further compromised due to the coup. Safe, voluntary and dignified return of Rohingya refugees to their place of origin has to remain a point of concern for the international community. Thank you.
Thank you, and I now give the floor to Slovenia by video message.
Madam President, Slovenia aligns with the EU statement. Slovenia is deeply concerned by the situation in Myanmar following the general elections on 8 November 2020, which marked an important milestone in the democratic transition of the country despite current health and security challenges. We strongly condemn the military coup and the removal of the civilian government elected by the people of Myanmar. We are concerned by the detention of political leaders and elected officials, including the president, the state councillor, human rights defenders, journalists, and others. The military should refrain from using any unnecessary or excessive force against peaceful protesters and ensure that members of civil society organizations and the media operate freely and without fear of reprisal. Justice and accountability in respect of alleged crimes must be preserved. We call to restore telecommunications and refrain from imposing any further restrictions. We call on military to end the state of emergency, restore power to democratically elected government, and immediately and unconditionally release all detained. In conclusion, safe and unimpeded humanitarian access to all people in need must be ensured. We call for full cooperation with and the granting of full unrestricted access to UN mandate holders and human rights mechanisms. Thank you.
Thank you, and I now give the floor to Romania by video message.
Madam President, Romania welcomes the convening of this special session and fully aligns itself with the statement delivered by the European Union. The Human Rights Council cannot and will not remain silent in front of the troubling events in Myanmar. Human rights violations require urgent reactions and democratic transition must be restored. We are deeply concerned about the military coup in Myanmar, which we strongly condemn. We stand with the people of Myanmar in their quest for democracy, respect for democratic elections, fundamental freedoms and the rule of law. We further underline the call to return to constitutional order, as well as the need for accountability for past and ongoing human rights violations. We call upon the military to refrain from violence, to restore civilian government, to allow the democratically elected parliament to convene, and urge for a thorough consideration of all available options to restore democratic processes and institutions. Government officials and civil society activists should be immediately and unconditionally released. In its current capacity as chairman of the Community of Democracies, Romania emphasizes the need to uphold and defend democracy all over the world, especially in places such as Myanmar, where it has come under siege. Based on the Charter of the United Nations and the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, Romania will work for joint international action to ensure that democracy and democratic values prevail. I thank you.
Thank you, and I give the floor to Sweden for a video message.
Thank you, Madam President. Sweden welcomes this opportunity to address the crisis in Myanmar through a special session. Sweden is gravely concerned about the declaration of the state of emergency imposed by the military in Myanmar. Sweden calls on the military to respect the will of the people as manifested in the elections held on November 8. The legitimate civilian government must be immediately restored. All those arbitrarily detained, including members of government, human rights defenders, journalists and others, must be released immediately and without conditions. The people of Myanmar, including civil society, human rights defenders and journalists, ought not to be silenced. The right to freedom of opinion and expression online, as well as offline, must be guaranteed. violence, intimidation and harassment of those exercising their rights to peaceful assembly must stop, and the military should refrain from using excessive force. Serious human rights violations and abuses for which impunity still persists have been committed in Myanmar. Human rights monitoring and reporting of the situation is key. The UN Special Rapporteur must be ensured access to the country. The international community cannot allow a military coup to be a stepping stone for renewed violence in Myanmar. I thank you.
Thank you, and I give the floor to Greece for a video message.
Madam President, Greece aligns itself with the EU statement and would like to add the following on its national capacity. During the recent UPR, Greece reiterated its serious concern regarding the grave human rights violations in Myanmar. We noted, however, the progress achieved in the democratic transition. The February 1st coup marked a backsliding in this respect, making the holding of this special session both timely and necessary. Greece calls for the will of the people of Myanmar, as expressed in the November elections, to be respected. We deplore the arbitrary detention of members of the government, political leaders, human rights defenders, journalists, activists, and others, and call for their immediate release. We also call for the respect of the fundamental rights and freedoms of the people of Myanmar, including their freedom of opinion and expression of assembly and association. The state of emergency, as well as restrictions on the internet, telecommunication, and social media, must be lifted. Madam President, as we call for the resumption of the democratization process, we must not forget that Myanmar's ability and willingness to address its past and present remain of critical importance. Credible accountability procedures for the serious human rights violations and abuses committed in the country constitute a necessary foundation to building a better future for all of its people. The ongoing processes in the ICJ and the ICC, as well as the IMM, are of vital importance.
Thank you, and I give the floor to Israel for a video message.
Thank you, Madam President. Israel welcomes the call by the United Kingdom and European Union for this special session to discuss the human rights implication of the crisis in Myanmar. We are closely following the situation after the declaration of the state of emergency imposed by the military on February 1st and support holding this meeting today. Madam President, we are deeply concerned by the detention of democratically elected members of the government, including head of state Aung San Suu Kyi and President Win Myint, and call for their urgent release. We are further concerned with the restrictions on civil society, including restrictions on the internet, telecommunications, and social media. Israel continues to be concerned about the ongoing situation of the Rohingya, and we look forward to a solution to their plight. Madam President, Israel will continue to support the people of Myanmar and the process of democratization. We call for the preservation of peace and the rule of law in the country and for the prevention of all violence. Thank you.
Thank you, and I give the floor to Belarus by video message.
Madam President, we would like to express our concern with the trend of proliferation of country resolutions in the UN Human Rights Council. We believe that a number of questions raised during the current discussion falls outside the mandate of the Human Rights Council and thus creates a negative precedent for the future. The Human Rights Council uses the same instruments to react to the crisis situations in the area of human rights that we believe are mostly based on politics than real substance. We believe that throughout the multiplication of country resolutions, it will be impossible to overcome crisis situations, including in Myanmar, without real political diplomatic efforts and negotiations involving all stakeholders. Thank you.
Thank you, and I give the floor to the Holy See by video message, followed by New Zealand by Zoom.
Madam President, in these days, the Holy See has been following with great attention and deep concern the developments of the situation that has come about in Myanmar, a country that since the time of his apostolic visit in 2017, Pope Francis has carried in his heart with so much affection. In this most delicate moment, the Holy See wishes to assure once again its spiritual closeness, prayer and solidarity with the people of Myanmar. The Holy See also implores that those who hold responsibility in the country will place themselves and their actions with sincere willingness at the service of the common good, of fundamental human and civil rights, of promoting social justice and national stability for a harmonious, democratic and peaceful coexistence. The Holy See invites everyone to put aside all that stands in the way of the indispensable process of dialogue and mutual respect of human dignity. The Holy See is hoping for a peaceful and swift resolution to the ongoing tensions, remains confident that further dialogue may bring about so much desired peace. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, and I give the floor to New Zealand by Zoom.
Madam President, please accept New Zealand's congratulations on the assumption of your role. New Zealand welcomes this special session of the Human Rights Council. We share the international community's deep concerns about the military intervention and impact on the human rights situation and peace process in Myanmar. New Zealand condemns the military coup in Myanmar and calls for the immediate return to civilian government. As a strong supporter of the rule of law and democratic process, New Zealand rejects the Tatmadaws actions and calls for the democratic will of the people in Myanmar to be respected. New Zealand also calls for the immediate release of all those arbitrarily detained by the military, including political and civil society leaders, democracy activists, journalists, and advisors, some of whom are also foreign nationals. New Zealand is deeply concerned about the implications of the military coup on the civil and political rights of the people of Myanmar. Military interference does not have a place in democratic processes or governance, and New Zealand takes this opportunity to reaffirm that civil and political rights such as freedom of expression and the right to peaceful demonstration must be protected. New Zealand calls on Myanmar to uphold these international human rights obligations by allowing the people of Myanmar the right to peacefully protest and by ensuring a safe environment to exercise these rights free from intimidation and violence. New Zealand welcomes the Council's attention to this issue and joins in encouraging Myanmar to work with the international community to address these concerns. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, and I now give the floor to Belgium by video message.
Madam President, Belgium strongly condemns the coup, the military coup in Myanmar. This involved intolerable acts of violence, including many arrests of representatives, elected representatives and members of civil society. We deplore the threats and physical violence against journalists and human rights defenders. My country urges the military forces to immediately and unconditionally release people who have been detained arbitrarily. We call for respect for human rights, the rule of law, and preserving institutions and democratic process. In order to achieve this, maintaining dialogue between all stakeholders in the country is of primordial importance. Belgium recalls that pursuant to international obligations, Myanmar has to respect the right for peaceful demonstration and needs to open up a space to dissident voices. We would call the military forces to refrain from all use of force against people and respect the rights of ethnic and religious minorities. Belgium would also ask for removal of restrictions on information and access to information, or establishing access to internet and social networks. Finally, we call on Myanmar to guarantee unlimited humanitarian access to peoples in need, as well as independent access to the country for OHCHR and also for the Special Rapporteur for Myanmar. Thank you.
Thank you. And I now give the floor to the United States of America for a video message, followed by Singapore, followed by Liechtenstein. Singapore and Liechtenstein will speak on Zoom. The United States of America.
Thank you, Madam President. The United States condemns the military's February 1 coup against the democratically elected government of Myanmar. We stand with the people of Myanmar in calling for the immediate restoration of the country's democratic institutions. We ask all Council members to join the United States and others to 1. Urge the military to immediately release all those unjustly detained, including politicians, civil society representatives, journalists, foreign nationals, and human rights defenders. 2. Urge the military and police to restore power to the democratically elected government, demonstrate respect for human rights and fundamental freedoms, and refrain from further violence against peaceful protesters. 3. Urge the military to lift all restrictions on access to information, including by maintaining telecommunications and internet access. 4. Join us in promoting accountability for those responsible for the coup, including through targeted sanctions. Thank you.
Thank you, and I now give the floor to Singapore by Zoom.
Madam President, Singapore expresses grave concern about the latest situation in Myanmar. We are monitoring the situation closely and hope all parties involved will exercise restraint, maintain dialogue, and work towards a positive and peaceful outcome. Myanmar is a close friend of Singapore and key member of ASEAN. We hope that the situation will return to normal as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, and I now give the floor to Liechtenstein on Zoom.
Thank you, Madam President. Liechtenstein thanks the United Kingdom and the EU for the request for the special session on the situation in Myanmar. We are deeply concerned about the removal of the civilian government by the military and the arbitrary arrest of democratically elected members of the government, including State Councillor Aung San Suu Kyi and President Win Myint, other political leaders, human rights defenders, journalists, media workers, activists, foreign experts, and others. We regret that the military of Myanmar has chosen to disregard the people's will as expressed in the elections of November 2020. The declaration of the state of emergency is as unacceptable as the internet shutdowns or the unwillingness of the leaders of Myanmar to uphold their human rights obligations. In light of the serious pre-existing human rights crisis in Myanmar, the military coup represents a clear danger of additional escalation. Madam President, in a situation of such gravity, the active involvement of the intergovernmental bodies is required. Liechtenstein supports the resolution to be adopted by the end of this special session and calls upon the Myanmar military to immediately lift the state of emergency, release arbitrarily detained persons, allow fair, independent investigations into all human rights violations, and cooperate with the OHCHR, as well as with Human Rights Council and its mandate holder. I thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, and I give the floor to Malta by video message, followed by Lao People's Democratic Republic by Zoom.
Madam President, Malta aligns itself with the statement of the European Union. Malta deplores the removal of the democratically elected government carried out by the Myanmar military on 1st February 2021. We are deeply concerned by the detention of political leaders and civil society activists, including State Councillor Aung San Suu Kyi and President Win Myint, and call for their unconditional release. Civilians, including civil society and journalists, must not be subject to reprisals of any form. Additionally, restrictions on the internet and social media must be permanently lifted immediately. We also call for safe and unrestricted humanitarian access to support the most vulnerable. Madam President, we call upon the military to immediately lift the state of emergency, restore power to the legitimate civilian government, release all those unjustly detained, and to respect human rights and the rule of law. The results of the November elections must be respected, and Parliament should convene at the earliest opportunity. Malta reiterates its support to Myanmar's civilian and democratic transition and stands with its people to ensure that democracy prevails. I thank you.
Thank you, and I give the floor to the Lao People's Democratic Republic on Zoom.
Madam President, as an immediate neighboring country and ASEAN fellow, the Lao people has been followed by the development in Myanmar. We reiterate the importance of maintaining the political stability in ASEAN member states to achieve a peaceful, stable, and prosperous ASEAN community. We are of the view that the international community should create a conducive environment for Myanmar to resolve its internal differences through peaceful means in order for Myanmar to continue its democratization process as well as national development. In conclusion, we would like to emphasize the importance of the guiding principle of Human Rights Council, including the principle of non-selectivity and constructive international dialogue and cooperation. I thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, and I now give the floor to Luxembourg by video message.
Madam President, my delegation aligns itself with the statement made by the European Union. Luxembourg expresses its full solidarity with the people of Myanmar and strongly condemns the military coup d'etat. The armed forces should show full restraint in front of demonstrations of civilians. They should free all political prisoners, remove all obstacles to civil and political rights, especially the freedom of the press and opinion and expression, and restore access to the internet, and finally submit themselves to civilian oversight as soon as possible. My delegation supports the resolution to be adopted. We renew our appeal to all authorities of Myanmar to ensure unimpeded access to the set of protections of human rights of the United Nations. Impunity for large-scale violations of human rights should be ended once and for all, especially the crime of genocide against the Rohingya and crimes of war crimes that are committed against them and other ethnic minorities. Impunity encourages repetition of the most serious of crimes. Targeted and effective restrictive measures against the junta and its economic interests should be studied. Thank you.
Thank you, and I give the floor to Croatia for a video message.
Thank you, Madam President. Croatia aligns itself with the statement of the European Union. We are deeply concerned with the course of events in Myanmar and strongly condemn unconstitutional seizure of power by the military forces, which imposed a year-long state of emergency, creating a climate of fear and repression. Particularly troubling are the latest reports of police using water cannons and rubber bullets on peaceful protesters. We invite the military leadership to refrain from violence against civilians and to respect the rights of the people of Myanmar to peacefully protest and express their opinion. The restrictions on civil society journalists and media workers are additionally concerning. We call for prompt release of all detainees and restoration of democratically elected government. Any allegation of election irregularities has to be processed through the proper legal mechanisms. Recent events have trampled Myanmar's 10 years long democratic transition and overshadowed efforts invested in peace process and national reconciliation. We underline our support for restoration of democratic process and full respect for human rights, fundamental freedoms and the rule of law in order to create conditions necessary for addressing past and ongoing human rights violations in the country. In this sense, we express our full support to the ongoing mandate of independent investigative mechanisms for Myanmar in ensuring justice and accountability. Croatia calls all parties to find an urgent way out of the crisis through de-escalation and an inclusive national dialogue. I thank you.
Thank you, and I give the floor to Finland for a video message, followed by Turkey on Zoom, then Switzerland by Zoom. Finland, you have the floor.
Madam President, Finland aligns itself with the statement by the European Union. Finland condemns in the strongest terms the military coup carried out in Myanmar. Finland calls upon the military to immediately and without any conditions release the president, the state councillor and all those who have been arrested, exercise maximum restraint, respect all human rights, freedoms of expression and assembly and the rule of law. Finland also calls upon the military to immediately end the state of emergency, restore the civilian government, to open the newly elected parliament and to proceed with the subsequent appointments of the president, vice presidents and of the new government. Finland is very concerned of the attempts to limit freedoms of expression and assembly online and offline. Internet shutdowns and the targeted blockage of social media platforms cannot be used as political tools for preventing people from using digital space to express their ideas and defending their human rights. The internet should enable members of the civil society to advocate for their rights, share their views, and increase their access to information. Thank you.
Thank you, and I give the floor to Turkey on Zoom.
Madam President, do you hear me?
We hear you very clearly. Please proceed.
Okay, thank you. We are deeply concerned about and strongly condemn the military takeover that took place in Myanmar on the 1st of February. As a matter of principle, Turkey has always been against any kind of coup d'etats and military interventions. We expect the immediate release of all the elected officials and political personalities and civilians who are detained. In that regard, we call upon the reconvening of the new parliament as soon as possible and prompt removal of all restrictions placed on the elected leaders and democratic institutions. We are particularly concerned about the fate and political future of Aung San Suu Kyi. We hope that this grave development will not worsen the plight of Rohingya Muslims living in Myanmar. The elections that took place in November 2020 was hailed by the international community as open and fair. We joined the European Union declaration condemning the military coup in the strongest terms. We are also among the countries who have supported convening of this special session and became a co-sponsor to the draft resolution on the agenda of this meeting. We are ready to support the international community to take a firmer stance against the military coup. The reaction of the military to the public protests will be a determining factor for the stability of the country as well as for future negative implications on human rights situation.
Thank you, and I now give the floor to Switzerland on Zoom. Switzerland, you have the floor.
Madame la Présidente, la suite.
Madam President, Switzerland is seriously concerned with the recent events in Myanmar. We call upon the Burmese army to release all democratically elected persons and stop the repression of journalists and human rights defenders. Switzerland is in favor for the restarting dialogue to achieve sustainable peace and development. The recent events may seriously throw back the progress achieved by the country and the human rights situation, exacerbated by the current health crisis. Switzerland would like to urge the Burmese authorities to provide access to the Office of the High Commissioner and Special Rapporteur and ensure dialogue between different parties. The situation of displaced persons in Myanmar may even further deteriorate, and we need a voluntary safe return of the Rohingya refugees, something that is becoming more and more difficult. It is crucial that the voice of civil society is heard. Switzerland calls upon the Myanmar military to respect the freedom of assembly and peaceful demonstrations and refrain from any violence in line with international agreements that Myanmar should respect. It is crucial that to ensure the free use of internet that should be reestablished throughout the country. Thank you.
And I now give the floor to the United Nations Children's Fund by Zoom, followed by Australia by Zoom, followed by Vietnam by Zoom. The United Nations Children's Fund, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Madam President. UNICEF expresses deep concern regarding the impact of the ongoing crisis on children's well-being and reminds all parties of their obligations to uphold all children's rights as enshrined in the Convention on the Right of the Child, to which Myanmar is a state party. and under the Myanmar Child Rights Law enacted in 2019. These rights include the rights to protection, participation, peaceful assembly, and freedom of expression. They also include freedom from unlawful and arbitrary detention or separation from parents. In crisis situations, children are often disproportionately affected, and it is essential that all parties uphold the best interest of the child, one of the core principles of the CRC, as a primary consideration. In the context of ongoing demonstrations and current events and reports of injuries, some potentially fatal, UNICEF calls on all actors, including security forces, to exercise the utmost restraint, to resolve differences through constructive and peaceful means, and to prioritize the protection and safety of children and young people as they express their opinions. I thank you.
Thank you, and I give the floor to Australia by Zoom.
Australia has serious concerns about the military coup in Myanmar and for its democratic transition. Elected government leaders, political leaders, officials, civil society figures and others have been arbitrarily detained. An Australian citizen, a respected economist, has been detained. We call urgently for his immediate release so he can return home to his family and for the release of all those who have been detained. We strongly urge the military to engage in dialogue to support a return to civilian rule and the reconvening of the National Assembly the Myanmar people so clearly want. We welcome the ASEAN Chairman's statement of 1 February, recalling the principles enshrined in the ASEAN Charter. We call on the authorities to ensure the protection of civilians and uphold human rights, including the right to peaceful assembly, to exercise utmost restraint and to refrain from any use of violence. Australia is deeply concerned about the potential impact of these events on humanitarian crises across the country, which disproportionately affect the most vulnerable. We urge unhindered humanitarian access. Australia's commitment to the people of Myanmar is long-standing and steadfast, and we restate that commitment here today. Thank you.
Thank you, and I give the floor to Vietnam by Zoom. Vietnam, you have the floor.
Vietnam, please unmute.
Hello? Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you, Ambassador. We can see you and we can hear you. Please proceed.
Madam President, as a neighboring country and fellow ASEAN member, Vietnam has been closely following the current developments in Myanmar. As Myanmar undergoes democratic transition, the country is still tackling numerous daunting challenges, including the continuing decades-long ethnic armed conflicts, the old and new complex issues in Rakhine State, and the recent devastating impact of COVID-19 global pandemic. We reiterate that political stability in ASEAN member states is essential to achieving a peaceful, stable, and prosperous ASEAN community. We hope that Myanmar would soon stabilize the situation for national building and development, for peace, stability, and cooperation in the region, and continuing to contribute to the process of building the ASEAN community. In times like these, it is crucial that the international community and development partners continue their support for the democratic transition in Myanmar. Vietnam encourages the pursuance of dialogue, reconciliation, and the return to normalcy in accordance with the will and interests of the people of Myanmar. I thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, and I now give the floor to Slovakia for a video message.
Madam President, Slovakia associates with the statement of the European Union and would like to add a few words in national capacity. Slovakia believes that all people have the right to live in peace and raise their children in a secure environment. The state they live in should be the first responsible for guaranteeing such a conducive environment, respecting the dignity and human rights of its citizens. After decades of oppression, people in Myanmar chose the path of democratic transition based on respect for human rights. The work of the HRC has also contributed to this. However, the recent coup d'etat has the potential to ruin a people's dream while bringing back oppression of human rights and violation of the rule of law. Arbitrary detentions, massive attacks of freedom of expression, freedom of assembly must be stopped immediately. Slovakia sees the urgency of addressing the current situation by the Human Rights Council and appreciates that the Human Rights Council members acted in this way, calling swiftly for a special session. We fully subscribe to the text of the draft resolution, with its strong appeals to put an end to human rights violations, with clear mandate for UN mechanism to help Myanmar's people revert to the path chosen by their free will. I thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, and I now give the floor to Iceland for a video message.
Madam President, Iceland is deeply concerned over the situation in Myanmar. We condemn the recent military coup and the subsequent actions of the Myanmar security forces who have arbitrarily arrested and detained hundreds of people. We call for the immediate release of all civilians, including all political leaders. We remind the Myanmar military of the duty under international law to refrain from using excessive force against peaceful demonstrators protesting against the military coup. The world is indeed watching. Madam President, this is not the first time the situation in Myanmar is discussed by this august body. The Myanmar security forces stand accused of having committed genocide and crimes against humanity against the Rohingya people. The civilian leadership of Aung San Suu Kyi has faced condemnation as well for defending these acts. However, Aung San Suu Kyi and her party, the NLD, were the clear victors of the recent elections. Its results must be recognized and the democratically elected government of Myanmar reinstated. Only with proper democracy, respect for human rights, and accountability for serious international crimes can the people of Myanmar enjoy the future they rightly deserve. I thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, and I give the floor to Tunisia for a video message, followed by Jordan on Zoom, followed by Spain on Zoom. Tunisia, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. My delegation would like to express its deep concern in light of the recent developments in Myanmar after the takeover of power by the armed forces and the detention of political leaders in civil society. They must be immediately liberated, and the return to the constitutional system should be ensured with the respect of democracy and the rule of law. We're also concerned in the growing violence leading to civilian victims, especially in Rakhine State. We urge Myanmar to deal with the root causes of the Rakhine crisis and ensure that the conditions are created for voluntary return of Rohingya in conditions of dignity. Those who committed crimes should be held accountable, and the opinion of the ICJ should be respected. We regret the exclusion of the Rohingya candidates in the 2020 elections and the partial and full cancellation of the results of the voting, especially in Rakhine State. Thank you.
Thank you. And I give the floor to Jordan by Zoom, followed by Spain by Zoom, followed by South Africa by Zoom.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. السيدة الرئيسة.
Madam President, we would like to thank the Office of the High Commissioner and the Special Rapporteur for the update on the situation in Myanmar. We praise the central role played by our August Assembly in the area of human rights. We reiterate the importance of the following: to take the necessary measures to ensure the cooperation of Myanmar authorities with UN mechanisms and to respect the resolutions of the Council. Number two, the Council and any other human rights mechanism should not ignore the tragedy of the Rohingya and other ethnic and religious minorities in Myanmar. The responsibility lies on the shoulders of the authorities of Myanmar to protect religious and ethnic minorities and protect these minorities and ensure the return of displaced persons to their homes. And we also would like to stress the role of the international community to send a message in unity in light of this crisis. We need to reestablish peace and justice in order to ensure the population of Myanmar can enjoy peace and prosperity. Thank you.
Thank you. And I give the floor to Spain by Zoom.
Spain, please unmute.
¿Me oye ahora?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you. Please proceed.
Gracias.
Thank you, Madam President. I'd like to express the thanks of Spain for holding this special session with so quickly in these difficult circumstances. This shows the flexibility that the Human Rights Council continue its works. Madam President, we align ourselves with a statement made by the European Union. We condemned the acts of the armed forces of Myanmar and ensure the reestablishment of civilian authorities in the country. The use of force should be stopped, especially against peaceful demonstrations, and also stop the repression of human rights defenders and protect the fundamental freedoms. We also urge the country to cooperate with UN human rights mechanism, especially with the Office of the High Commissioner and the Special Rapporteur on Myanmar. Spain would like to urge a democratic transition and find a solution on the basis of democratic institutions of the country and in line with the principles established by the UN Charter. Thank you.
Thank you. And I give the floor to South Africa by Zoom, followed by the Maldives by Zoom.
Madam President, South Africa appreciates the convening of this special session aimed at addressing the latest developments concerning human rights in Myanmar. South Africa has indeed noted with serious concern the deterioration of civil and political rights in Myanmar over the past years. However, the current situation, including the detention of the state councillor, Do Aung San Suu Kyi, and other political leaders on the eve of the opening session of Myanmar's parliament, has amplified these concerns. Our government has joined the international community in calling for their immediate release and a return to the rule of law. These regrettable developments undermine democratic reforms undertaken in Myanmar following the general elections held on 8 November 2020. We call upon the military to respect the rule of law as well as international human rights and humanitarian law. South Africa firmly believes that political differences should be resolved through peaceful and inclusive dialogue. South Africa will continue to support the people of Myanmar in their pursuit of democracy, peace, human rights, and the rule of law. During crises, it is the vulnerable groups that bear the brunt, and the impact on women and children will be disproportionately felt. We appeal that the right of life and health are upheld as the world is reeling from the COVID-19 pandemic. I thank you, Madam President.
Thank you. And I now give the floor to the Maldives, followed by Qatar. The Maldives, the floor is yours. Please proceed, Ambassador.
At the outset, let me express our appreciation to Madam President for addressing this urgent matter in a timely manner. The Maldives is deeply concerned about the rapidly deteriorating situation in Myanmar and its implications for the people of Myanmar. Maldives strongly condemns the state of emergency imposed by the Myanmar military on February 1st following the military coup that ousted the democratically elected government and the arbitrary detention of members of the civilian government, including the chairperson of the National League for Democracy and State Council, Aung San Suu Kyi, and President Win Myint. We are presently concerned by the news of the suppression of the voice of the people in Myanmar through restrictions to internet access, telecommunications, media, and the clampdown on peaceful gatherings and protests. The government of Maldives calls on the military to immediately and unconditionally release all those who are placed under arbitrary detention, uphold the rule of law, and to respect and restore the democratic process. Further, the government of Maldives remains deeply concerned over the continued acts of human rights violations and escalation of violation against the Rohingya Muslims. We call on Myanmar to respect its human rights obligations and international law, international humanitarian law, and human rights covenants. At this critical time, the Maldives calls on Myanmar to engage in dialogue and reconciliation with the goal of restoring democracy and to take immediate steps to protect the human rights of all people. I thank you, Madam President.
Thank you. And I now give the floor to Qatar, followed by Brunei, Dar es Salaam. Qatar, the floor is yours.
السيدة الرئيسة تراقب دولة قطر عن كثب الأوضاع.
Thank you, Madam President. We have been following the recent developments in Myanmar, and we are seriously concerned in light of the human rights situation, a situation with fundamental freedoms. And these violations can harm the people and lead to further violations, especially the Rohingya Muslims. We would like to recall the importance to ensure respect for international law, international human rights law, and ensure that there are independent inquiries into human rights violations. The authorities of Myanmar should protect all minorities, including the Rohingya minority, and guarantee the right to obtain nationality and ensure a sustainable, free return in conditions of security to their homes and to avail themselves of international assistance, something that will help achieve national reconciliation and stability. Finally, we support the efforts of the international community and other stakeholders to find a solution to the situation in Myanmar through dialogue. We have to strengthen national dialogue to find a solution to the crisis in order to guarantee and preserve national unity and preserve the hopes of the Myanmar people to development, security, and peace. Thank you.
Thank you. And I give the floor to Brunei, Dar es Salaam.
Thank you. Madam President, thank you for giving me the floor. I have the honor to deliver our national statement at this special session. Brunei Darussalam is closely monitoring the situation in the Republic of the Union of Myanmar. Brunei Darussalam recalls the purposes and principles enshrined in the UN Charter, in particular in promoting and encouraging the respect for human rights and fundamental freedoms. Brunei Darussalam reaffirms that the political stability in all ASEAN member states is essential to achieving a peaceful, stable and prosperous ASEAN community. We reiterate the ASEAN's chairman's statement of 1st February 2021, recalling the purposes and principles enshrined in the ASEAN Charter, including the adherence to the principles of democracy, the rule of law and good governance, respect for and protection of human rights and fundamental freedoms. Brunei Darussalam encourages all parties concerned to seek political solution through dialogue and consultations in the spirit of friendship and mutual trust. Brunei Darussalam stands ready to work with Myanmar, both bilaterally and through ASEAN, towards a positive and peaceful outcome. We support all efforts to pursue reconciliation in accordance with the will and interests of the people of Myanmar. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you. I am now closing the Observer State segment. However, before moving on, I need to get back to the Member State segment. When I called the United Kingdom earlier on to read a joint statement, there was a technical problem and this could not be done. I will now give them the floor for a joint statement. The United Kingdom, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you very clearly, Ambassador. Please proceed.
Thank you, Madam President. We are making a joint statement on behalf of the United Kingdom and Iceland to bring the Council's attention to a letter that has just been submitted to the Human Rights Council by a group of 300 elected members of the Parliament in Myanmar. Their letter contains the following passage, and I quote, "Excellencies, we urge you to immediately investigate the following matters which undermine any peaceful transition to democracy in Myanmar, regional stability, and international peace and security. Since the military coup on the 1st of February 2021, the Myanmar military committed grave human rights violations. It made illegal arrests and arbitrarily detained elected members of parliament, senior leaders from the National League for Democracy, including Daw Aung San Suu Kyi, the president, government officials, human rights defenders, and civilians who take part in non-violent civil disobedience movements. The detainee list includes 300 now. The military also shot peaceful protesters, raided the ruling party's offices, and confiscated documents, records, and property. Moreover, it placed restrictions on people's freedom of speech by preparing a telecommunications bill intended to control access to the internet and mobile services. We urge the Human Rights Council to support our efforts." End quote. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you. We have now come to the end of this morning's meeting, and we will reconvene at 3 p.m. to continue our discussions with a list of speakers from non-government organizations. This meeting is closed. Thank you.